What's going on, everybody? My name is Jordan Miller. I do the marketing for Invision Community. We have a very special video for you today. I'm interviewing the founders of Invision Community to celebrate our 20th anniversary. It turned 20 years old back in February. It's currently the end of March, so we're taking a second to take a trip down memory lane and kind of relive some good times, see where the company is headed into the future. But before we dive into that interview, I do want to say thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. We'd love to reach new audiences and inspire new people to build a community. It's an incredible journey that you'll go on, so we'd love to help you with that. And if you could be so kind and like this video, that'll also help us reach new audience members, which would be great as well. And also want to say thank you for being an Invision Community client if you are. And if not, I'm going to put our email in the description of this video so you can reach out to us and we can get you on your way. All right, without further ado, I'm going to bring on the special guests. This is Charles, Matt, and Lindy. Gentlemen, you're on. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining. Now, we're going to kick things off by having you introduce yourselves. So Charles, then Lindy, then Matt, take it away.
I'm Charles. I do sales and stuff, marketing with Jordan.
I'm Lindy. I do customer service and general operations.
And I'm Matt, and I do mostly the development stuff.
Nice. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. So we're going to dive right in, and I want you to just tell me what your thoughts are on Invision Community turning 20 years old, because in internet years, that's essentially an eternity, and especially, not only surviving, but thriving through the social media boom and in many ways competing against social media. What are your general thoughts on Invision Community turning 20 years old?
Well, I would say, obviously, with it turning 20 years old, I'm 20 years older, and looking back at we were doing this recently, looking at some of our old photos from our younger years, and we all look quite a bit different. I don't know if that's because of time or the stress of it all. Who knows? And like you're saying, things like how much things have changed. I think that'll probably be a theme today. You'll hear me say a lot. As social media wasn't a thing 20 years ago. There was none of these kind of things, or there wasn't even an iPhone, 20 years ago. And it's been interesting how much has changed with how people communicate online, but also how there's an overarching theme that has remained the same, that people still always want to engage, and having those outlets are so important. And I think it's nice to have been involved with that progression over that time.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a huge sense of pride, really, for what we've achieved as a team. As Charles said, 20 years is a long time in human years, but in internet years, it's like 200 years. I mean, you think of a product that started 20 years ago that's still going now. We predate Facebook, we predate YouTube. So to be able to keep doing what we do, and with the team we have, just a huge sense of pride.
Lindy, what's up?
I think it's fun just to reflect on our humble beginnings. It was just pretty much just the three of us that kind of did almost everything. Charles and I did all of the phone calls, and
back when phone calls were a thing, back to the internet.
Yeah. And over the years we've acquired all this brilliant talent, and it's not just us anymore. It's much bigger than us, and I think it's been great.
I mean, we were just kids, weren't we? Really, when you look back at pictures, you feel like you're just a bunch of kids, just starting something.
I mean, I was a kid. I don't know, Lindy, have you ever been a kid?
No,
you were always.
He's always been a middle-aged man.
Yeah, so
that's true. I mean, we used to, like, every email. It was just us. That was support. And I shouldn't say we've always had other people involved. But at the end of the day, it's like we got to get it done. And nowadays, I couldn't imagine that. No,
the team we have now, we're very fortunate to have. And when you look back, when it was just us three, and we had all those different hats we had to wear, and if it was development, it was me. If it was sales, and it's kind of crazy when you think back to those beginnings.
Mm-hmm. So there have been some significant changes, obviously, throughout these last 2 decades. What would you say some of the most significant changes have been both personally as well in terms of Envision Community, as well as the platform itself?
I would say oh, go ahead, man.
No, after you, Charles.
Oh, sure. I would say
Like-
expectations from clients. What people expect from us at a high end. It used to be like, here's this script, have a nice day, and now people much more, a move toward cloud-based services, and people an expectation that they just want to put the community up and run with it. Where it used to be more people like to play with the technology, and it's not so much that thing anymore. But looking at back from a 20-year perspective, you remember like the iPhone came out. And it's like you have that moment of the whole industry goes, oh, now all of a sudden mobile matters. Before that, that wasn't really a thing, and adapting to that and changing and has trends come and go too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were on the same line there. I think over the last 20 years, the community industry has become more professional. And that has been challenging from a platform point of view to sort of cater for those changing needs over those 20 years. 20 years is a long time. As Charles said, with the iPhone, we've seen trends come, we've seen some go, we've seen some become stronger. So sort of always adapting our platform to meet those needs has always been a challenge.
So speaking of challenges then, what are some challenges when building a community, and perhaps what are, on the flip side, what are some of the advantages to having a community, and why does Envision Community play a role in all that?
Well, I mean, it's always challenging building a community. There's no way of getting around that. It takes a lot of work to get any new community off the ground, whether it's a brand community or a hobby community. I think, without turning it into a sales pitch, and Charles is much better than that than I am, I think Envision Community has a lot of flexibility built in, so it can cater to those different sort of audiences, kind of out of the box.
Yeah, for sure. I think starting a community from scratch is always a challenge. And I work with a lot of clients who are starting new communities. And a lot of advice I always give them is you be patient. It takes time to build a user base and to get things going. But the nice thing about communities is when you do start to build it, it does start to build upon itself. And it'll start to create its own personality. And then that's the second half is recognize every community has a different personality and different needs. So not only do we as a platform provider have to make sure our platform is flexible, but community administrators and owners need to make sure that they are flexible to grow with their community and don't try to enforce certain directions. Let it organically go.
Yeah, one thing that I've found through my time working at Envision Community is that oftentimes newer clients are expecting to launch a community, and like you mentioned, there's not this initial momentum that they would have hoped for in the beginning. So what is something that maybe someone who's just starting their new community building journey, what's some advice for them where they can kind of hold on to this advice to know that there is going to be more momentum in the future? What can they do? What can they think?
Well, I think, first of all, as Charles said, you've got to be patient. There's no overnight success with a community. It's very much a slow burn. But I think you've just got to go out and have conversations with people, not necessarily on your own platform. You go out and find where your audience is, and you start there. You start making you can't automate this. You can't. There's no easy way of doing this. You've got to go out and meet people and talk to people, but in an authentic way, not in a salesy way. You want to be authentic with that. And then once you have that relationship built, you can invite them over to the community and hope that they, contribute too. But it's all about making one-to-one personal connections at the beginning.
I love this idea of authenticity.
I think Matt's right, because you have to be authentic because, like I just said, your community develops a personality, but that stems from what you put into it in the beginning.
Yes, totally agree. I think authenticity is like an essential ingredient in all of this, because people know if you're not embodying what it means to create community, then people are smart. They're not going to want to be engaged with somewhere or someplace that doesn't embody, the ideals of what a community is. So looking back on everything, what is one of the biggest lessons you've learned? So essentially, like from the beginning up until now, what is a lesson that you've learned through creating Envision Community, through the business side of things? What's something that sticks out to you?
That's such a big question. I mean, I'm going to go with something quite generic. I think just remaining flexible. we try and always remain nimble enough to change quickly if we need to. And we always try and be flexible with our roadmap, with our feature plans. Sometimes we start building a feature and we have, a spec to build it to, but then halfway through or towards the end, we figure out another use case or a more interesting way of using it. And then we're flexible enough to adapt. You've got to be flexible.
Interesting. Charles and Lindy, can you kind of talk on this?
Yeah, Lindy should definitely fill this one.
I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is to never give Matt root access to.
Do you know what I was going to say? I was going to say, don't leave me with the Gallery 4 roadmap.
Yeah, I'd love for you gentlemen to kind of talk on this touching point of adaptability, because obviously for Invision Community, not only to be sustainable throughout all these years, but now is in the best place it's ever been. Adaptability is huge. So what are some ways that you personally have been adaptable as well as the platform?
I mean, so many ways. Lindy and I think about years ago, the technology stacks we use, we used to have to literally rack physical servers. And of course, nowadays you press a button and 10 seconds later you have a virtual machine running somewhere. And
it's the same principle that kind of applies all through life, is work smarter, not harder. And we've kind of adapted to that over the years.
Nice. So does anything kind of come to mind in terms of working smarter, not harder, and being more efficient in growing Invision Community?
Well, this kind of ties into the lessons we've learned. And I think historically in our earlier years, we would tend to build for kind of a vocal minority. And, we would overcomplicate things, I guess you could say. And I think we've learned to see the forest through the trees. And
I think we've definitely been better at listening to feedback, and there is sometimes some frustration on our own community about feedback and how we manage it. But what we tend to do is, like Lindy said in the past, we would fixate on maybe one or two voices. But what we tend to do now is just let multiple voices have their thoughts on what they need for the community, and then we kind of take a sort of a top-down view and kind of collate all that and try and look at the trends behind those feature requests.
Yeah, I was going to use the word trends as well. It's not so much about specific. It's not so much about feature requests. It's more about different feature requests that sort of come together to one concept. And oftentimes that we can implement something that's better than the sum of a whole sort of thing. It's a better approach than just implementing individual feature requests.
Simple suggestion evolves into a much bigger.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind to kind of give viewers and current Invision Community clients a peek behind the curtain is that we do take this feedback very seriously. And as cheesy as it sounds, just working with the team and everything, it's like we clearly care a lot. We care about not only the platform constantly growing and improving and adding features and becoming more efficient and seeing the forest from the trees, but also we care about how the clients of ours are using the platform and how it's helping. It's literally helping people. It's helping them grow their own businesses, their own, whether it could just be a hobby. We have clients that are small, big, and large, small, medium, and large. And it's cool to see how they use the platform in various ways. And it ultimately comes from a place of us caring. So have you been kind of surprised at any sort of client who's used the platform in a way that, didn't necessarily jump out to you, starting this 20 years ago? Like now here we are 2 decades later, and there's, we have lots of clients using this platform for various ways. Does any sort of business model come to mind that is, interesting to you that you didn't anticipate ever becoming a thing, or anything kind of stick out to you?
Lots, yeah. And I think, to one of your earlier things you were talking about was it's great when, we're sort of starting to develop a feature or develop something, and then we sort of might mention it to a client offhand. It's like, oh, this is something we're working on, and they get excited about it. And exactly what you're saying, they'll say, well, we could use it this way. And it's like, well, that's not how we anticipated you using it, but that's actually a great idea. And a lot of times what happens is by the time we actually launch this new feature, it has evolved quite a bit. because our clients are giving us ideas and approaches we didn't really anticipate. And that's always, that's really, really great. But yeah, we have clients, yeah, I mean, you name it. I mean, we once had a bank, I think, use us as their like emergency. If their phone communication systems went down, we were their backup for that.
One of my favorites was
I think
a customer that used our Pages database feature to dispatch ambulances.
Yeah,
their 911 call center. Yeah, that was.
We have, I won't name the country because I don't know if that's appropriate, but there is a certain country in the world that their election commission uses our platform as a way to have people, you know, they use their databases to show, so they can download public data, all sorts of really interesting stuff in their election commission. So it's really quite interesting to see the different things people use it for.
Yeah, I think at one point NASA were using us as an internal community as well at the propulsion labs, which was kind of cool.
But we actually have a lot of people that use us internally. We don't know what they do with us internally.
Yeah, those internal communities.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's like community inception in a way, where by brainstorming with clients, you know, in our own little community, we end up generating new ideas that create and inspire new features that maybe we wouldn't necessarily have thought of on our own, which is essentially, that is the power of community. You know, by just being on an island by yourself, you're going to have less innovation than you would if you're collaborating with a community. And oftentimes, you know, we brought up social media a little bit earlier, and I do want to touch on that because social media is not inherently bad or anything. In fact, it's actually in many ways very powerful and very good. However, I think that we do need to make the distinction between social media and community, because one thing that we pride ourselves on is having meaningful conversations in community, where oftentimes in social media, it tends to be you kind of throwing your comment out into the wind, hoping someone responds. Do you guys have any sort of comment on how social media has erupted over the course of these last, 10 years or so, and compare that to kind of the origins of Invision Community?
I think what's interesting, but how we relate to social media is when social media first got really big, popular, I think a lot of people are panicking, like, oh, traditional, like owned, what I call owned communities, what we do, that people are like, oh, no one's going to care about them anymore, blah, blah. And for a while, maybe that was true for a bit as people were flocking there. But I think in recent years, it's really it's changed direction. People are seeing that social media is only one component of a strategy. And we've had a lot of clients in recent years rediscover the value of owning their community, both from the standpoint of they can own the user experience, which is great, but they also own the data. This is data that they can mine that they're not giving away to the social media platforms. And obviously privacy and stuff is a concern as well, but more just like, this is your data, your customer that you want to control that experience and that access to.
Yeah. So Matt, I see you weighing in on social media pretty frequently. I'd love to hear your perspective on, not necessarily social media versus community or Invision Community, but how they kind of play together, and kind of, touching on Charles' point of that you own the data. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is that community isn't a platform. Community are people, and people, especially now, are spread across multiple platforms. We have own platforms like ours. You have social media, you have Slack, Discord. People are across those platforms daily. So when you talk about community, it's not just one product or another. But saying that, the thing that those other platforms have in common are that they're quite temporary. It's great for live chat and live interaction, but less useful for permanence. I think when you look at our platform and the sort of forum platforms in general, their strength are in permanence, in having strong segmentation of discussions, in having, searchable history, in, being able to sort of crowdsource knowledge bases and things like that. That is where our platform excels. And that's where social media, but that's social media isn't going to replace that. There's no way it can replace that. The very fundamental principle of social media is everybody talking in a single feed. But that's not great when you want that permanent segmentation, as forums offer.
Yeah, one thing that kind of jumps out to me with all that is that social media tends to focus on the individual user,
Hmm.
whereas community obviously focuses on the whole. And I've found that to be a big distinction between the two. So shifting gears here a little bit, let's get a little warm and fuzzy. Starting with Lindy, I'd love for you to, if you have a fond memory or a story from the earlier days.
It has to be warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, I'd love for you to kind of like look back. Does anything come to mind in terms of like something funny that the a current Invision community client kind of get a little behind the scenes story here? Does anything stick out to you that's like a fond memory from the earlier days?
Fond that are shareable. That's a challenge. I can't really think of anything offhand internally, but we've done some pretty neat things over the years that we're pretty proud of.
For example,
people use our platform. I remember years ago there was a mother and her teenage son going through a lot of issues and was in drug use, and, discussing suicide, and they couldn't find him, and we kind of assisted with that because he was a member on one of our communities.
Wow.
That was pretty neat that we were able to do that, and it's interesting to see all the different, kind of going back, all the different uses. Stuff.
Literally helping save someone's life.
What's that?
Literally helping save someone's life. Wow. Charles, what about you?
Yeah, and along the line, it is nice to see. We've had a lot of great stories over the years of good things happening through our platform. It's really nice when you get to be a part of that. I would say over the years, just being able, because our team's spread all over the world, and we've had the opportunity over the years, probably not as often as we'd like to, but we do try to get together. It's always nice when you get to meet people that you talk to all day, every day, but you may go years without meeting them face to face. It's always nice when we get those meetups together, and those all sorts of good fun stories that are probably not safe to share from those meetups.
That goes back to the next.
But great fun, and it's nice to be able to meet up with those kind of things.
Nice. Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I think just 20 years with those two guys there and the rest of the team, I've just been so fortunate to been able to do this for so long, and I think, there's so many fond memories we have as a team, from hangovers in London, hangovers in Virginia. I mean, I don't drink now, but it's just a joy, to be able to keep working with these guys. It's just an absolute joy.
Nice. So kind of continuing the warm and fuzzy feeling. If you can go back and tell yourself, your younger self, something, piece of advice, or maybe a heads up or something from 20 years ago, if you can talk to your from 20 years ago, can you talk to yourself and give yourself advice? What would that be? What would you tell your younger self, now that you've had these 20 years?
I would well, there's a lot of things I tell me younger self, but speaking specifically about Invision Community and stuff like that, I would say, don't be afraid to push the envelope forward more quickly. I think sometimes we've held ourselves back in implementing new technologies because people don't like change, and that's perfectly normal. But sometimes you kind of have to force it and say, if people didn't like change, we would still be, we would have computer because nothing would ever change. And sometimes we have to push people forward out of their comfort zone and say, look, I know it's always been this way, but it needs to move forward. It needs to advance. And I think sometimes we've been slow on that because people naturally get worried. And I think sometimes I would have told my younger self, you need to kind of push it forward to maintain that momentum.
Nice. Lindy, what do you think?
I would, very much along the same lines. It starts as a confidence thing because you can, get a lot of pushback on things that deep down are right, but you kind of succumb to the pressure and hold yourself and everybody else back in the process. And so I would probably say be confident in what you're doing, and like Charles said, push the envelope and move forward, and for all of us, the benefit of everyone.
Nice. Matt, what are your thoughts?
What would I tell my younger self? I would probably tell a younger version of myself to remind Charles to take his laptop when he gets his car serviced.
Specific.
I may have tried
So
to
none of
delete
those.
some. Yeah, I need to.
Eat your, and remember, eat your vegetables.
Yeah, so no,
Going back to
no,
that.
it's. We had a lot of spam come into our old ticket system, and I took it upon myself to delete the spam tickets. And I may have accidentally deleted all tickets, and I may have accidentally had to phone Charles and ask him where he was, because you might need to restore it back up. And he was getting his car serviced at the time, so that was a fun story. Yeah, I just think I can't say
more tame ones.
Yeah, I could talk about a blog I tried to install once, but that's we haven't got time. Yeah, I can't say it better than Lindy and Charles have. I think 20 years ago we had no idea we'd still be here in 20 years' time. When we started all those years ago, we didn't have a 20-year business plan. We had probably a 12-month business plan.
Yeah, we had to survive until tomorrow. Was
right. It was like,
can
we get to the end of the month, and can we get to the end of the year? So I just think as they said, just be confident in your decisions, and don't be scared of change. Change is critical to growth. So yeah, it's just be bold in your decisions.
Yeah, I think a lot of community leaders and just entrepreneurs can relate to that, can relate to just trying to, survive, trying to just do what you love to do, and just trying to make ends meet. So very solid look back on everything. So now that we have taken a look back on the past, let's take a little look ahead. I know we can't reveal too much, but what's next for Invision Community? How do we see this next year kind of shaping up to be? And where do we see ourselves maybe in 20 years from now?
Go on, Charles.
I would say our kind of overarching themes, you could say, that we have going on are modernization, introducing technologies in the platform that weren't even available a year ago, 2 years ago, that didn't exist, which is exciting. Also, ease of use. And what I mean by that is, we're getting more and more communities out there they're not techie people who like to tinker with code and plugins, and they just want to launch the community and start talking to their users. So getting more focus into like ease of use and stuff like that. And also moving more toward, obviously, people's, again, kind of the same line, people's expectation of how they use our platform are changing, and recognizing that and saying, the customer base is changing, and how people engage with us is changing, and move forward with that. But I would say, the big themes are modernization and just making it easier to engage with.
Yeah, not much more to add to that. It's a perfect answer. It's just, as we always do, we continue to observe trends. We continue to observe who's using our platform, and just, kind of trying to create the best features for those people.
Nice.
I think Jordan probably wants something more specific.
Well,
watch the end of the video.
I know we do have some things in the works that are really exciting, but I know we also are still developing them. So for those watching, I know that's a little bit cryptic and annoying, but stay tuned, because we do have some really exciting stuff planned. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. So with that said, gentlemen, thank you so much for participating in this little interview. If you're still watching this video, props to you. You made it to the end, so we're sending you a lot of love and thank you. If you're interested in building your own community, reach out to us. I'll put all that information in the description of this video. Gentlemen, congratulations on 20 years. It's an incredible accomplishment. Just a lot of love and congratulations to you guys for creating something just so powerful that's changed so many people's lives, including my own. So thank you. And cheers to the next 20 years. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.